After the successes of Ukrainian counteroffensives east of Kharkiv, the media zeroed on to recent Russian use of Iranian-made drones as a possible Russian answer of a sort to Ukrainian gains. However, despite the fact Iranian drone usage escalated only in September, the whole Iranian drone saga lasted quite a bit longer. In fact, it was likely triggered by the US promise to send HIMARS system to Ukraine back in May. Already in June, Russian officials were allegedly seen in Iran inspecting various drones. In July, the US intelligence warned of a possible deal for perhaps even hundreds of Iranian drones to be supplied to Russia. This video will cover the recon drones first before going in depth into suicide drone analysis. Kamikaze drones are cutting-edge technology, but allow us a minute for the Japanese cutting edge of Kamikoto knives, which are sponsoring this video. Kamikoto makes awesome kitchen knives using traditional Japanese techniques. The steel used is sourced only from steel mills in Japan. Kamikoto was so kind as to send me some knives. As you can see, the knives come in a beautiful ashwood box. This would make for a great gift, and it feels heavy-duty, very solid. How's that going, hand? Very smooth cut. Cutting some beef was just as smooth. Kamikoto's product range includes many different knives and accessories with a lifetime guarantee. Each knife is individually inspected, so Kamikoto is pretty confident about their product. The knives are even used by several chefs working at Michelin star restaurants. Kamikoto has an early Black Friday sale right now, and on top of that, Binkov viewers can get an extra $50 off on any purchase with discount code. Go to kamikoto.com/Binkov to get your knife set and start slicing. Back to video. Deals like the one with Iran don't happen overnight. Inspections and presentations have to be made, test articles need to be operated by Russian personnel themselves. If satisfactory, the deal can be arranged, but even then some further weeks are likely needed to organize everything. It's unlikely Iranian manufacturers had a meaningful number of ready drones just lying around, so essentially Iran is likely selling a part of its active use fleet, so Russia could get their hands on it as quickly as possible. Cargo planes were tracked by US intelligence flying from Iran to Moscow, as first drone shipments allegedly arrived in early August. Those included larger drones best used for recon. Mohajer 6 is the smallest of the alleged types, mostly similar to Russian-owned 4-post drone, and slightly smaller than Bayraktar 2. While Russia had some 150 4-post drones before the war, it's quite possible many were lost since then. Sites such as Oryx, which track images of destroyed equipment, can't account for various drones that may have been downed, but of which no photos exist. Larger Russian drones such as Orion or Corsair are still not in mass production, unavailable in meaningful numbers. On the other side of the spectrum, the other numerous drone model, Orlan 10, is so small that its capabilities are modest. Orlan 10 had uncooled fixed-view commercial market security cam thermal sensor until a few years ago, quite inadequate for detection from long ranges. Some of the newer variants did have gimbaled sensors with French-made commercial market sensors. They also used Japanese-made engines. While Russia has possibly even 1,500 of such drones left, their usefulness is nowhere near that of a larger drone. Mohajer 6 specifications as per Iranian sources can't be verified, but are roughly in line of what can be expected for a drone of such a size. If indeed the drone can cruise at an altitude of 5 kilometers, it would make it immune to manpads and any sort of gun-based anti-aircraft fire, which are still the most widespread anti-aircraft methods Ukraine has. In a way, it would very much make sense for Russia to deliberately seek drones which can fly high enough to circumvent those threats. Such UAVs could of course be engaged with larger SAM missiles and airplanes, but for Russia it might be a worthy trade-off, risking some drones but in the process detecting where SAM missiles were fired from. That might aid in tracking down those SAM batteries. Or Russia might intercept some of the very limited number of remaining Ukrainian planes if those try to intercept drones. What Russia seems to be lacking in this war is precisely enough high-quality aerial sensors to monitor the battlefield and especially the areas behind the front line. Of course, there is no way of knowing just how capable sensors are in those Iranian drones. Iran has been known to use various off-the-shelf components for their drones, for engines, sensors, navigation modules, and so on. For example, from 2013 to at least 2017, Iran was found to be importing thermal optics from China. Austrian, German, Chinese, and Dutch engines were found in some drones, and so on. Just because Iran has been under sanctions for decades doesn't mean that every type of product from every country is unavailable to it. Iran can still move third-party products over its borders with Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, and so on. Consider that one can buy low-cost drones on AliExpress of semi-decent flight performance. By the way, Ukraine seems to have done just that, using similar drones for attacks. So it's quite plausible that a government-sponsored manufacturing push can make even better drones, using off-the-shelf components. Sanctions have meant Iran had to develop its own aerospace sector, which manages to produce jet aircraft. It's not of course known if the quality of sensors is great, but the fact Russia is buying them would suggest the quality is good enough. Overall, Iranian drones are likely not any better than what Russian industry can deliver, but quantity-wise, Iran has a well-run-in manufacture with an established supply chain. Compared to Russia, which has yet to figure out how to circumvent sanctions and establish a mass production supply chain, Iran can surely deliver more drones right away. Another Iranian drone that Russia has been using is the Shahed 129. It's a larger and more complex drone, bigger than Bayraktar TB2 for example. Really more comparable to US Predator drone in size. Probably the most potent optics are mounted on such drones. Comparable Russian drone would be the Inkodets Orion, but it's possible only a few dozen such drones have been made to date. So all these proper drones Russia is buying from Iran are really bought to augment the Russian drone fleet numbers-wise. Ukrainian frontline is vast, and sensors on those drones usually have to dwell on very tiny parts of the ground. Even hundreds of large drones might not be enough to fully cover a belt of dozens of kilometers behind the 1,000-kilometer-long front, where the opponent is grouping its logistics, its rocket artillery, and so on. There have also been allegations of Shahed 191 drones being bought by Russia, but so far no actual photos have been recorded. Said drone is famously modeled after the US RQ-170 drone. Of course, actual capabilities are much different. It's a smaller drone, likely lacking many stealth features, and some subvariants even use simpler piston engines. Still, some basic reduction in radar signature is likely, which might be enough to complicate matters for Ukraine's radar inventory, which is likely already inadequate in numbers to properly cover the battlefield. But perhaps the most written about drones that Russia is using are not drones at all, the Shahed 136s, which are in fact cruise missiles. Simple piston engine powered and large winged cruise missiles, but cruise missiles nonetheless. Famous US Switchblade drones are also not really drones, but loitering munitions which inevitably ram into their targets. Those at least have optical sensors and two-way data links, so they are recon platforms until the moment their operator chooses to kamikaze them into a target. These Iranian kamikaze munitions are different. Images show there is no optical sensor anywhere on the craft. Indeed, it is quite likely the 136 drone is indeed just a slightly bigger version of the Shahed 131 drone. That drone was the prior version. Both versions have seen use in Yemen war, and the US seems to have gotten their hands on one intact 131 drone. Ukrainian military then made a report which seems to refer to the US MEPED database. According to said Ukrainian report on the found 131 drone, there is no sensor on it whatsoever. There are one-way communication links and sat-nav receivers. Those are located on the top wing area of the craft. Basically, it's the same way a cheap cruise missile would navigate to a target. More complex cruise missiles usually also use added guidance means, such as a terrain matching or even added sensors for terminal target recognition. So this drone is in fact a cruise missile. Given that this missile doesn't have sensors, it's highly likely it is in fact used in the following manner. While not launched yet, target coordinates are input into it. While there were some images of said Iranian missiles hitting vehicles, such as artillery pieces, those mean that the vehicle stayed put for some time, long enough for the missile to either get launched and travel to the target coordinates, or to receive an updated coordinate set via radio data link while in flight. Allegedly, the missile has both a line-of-sight radio receiver and a satellite radio receiver. Once launched, the Iranian missile can follow waypoints, so it can be used to travel over less protected areas and approach a target from behind, for example. Analysis of the captured drone also showed electronics are somewhat protected from being hacked into, but also that they can still be jammed. 4-antenna SatNav receiver kit, as seen here, is new compared to the older SatNav receiver array on some previous models of the drone. Given that, the general position of the receiver and missile's wings somewhat protecting the receiver, jamming the satellite signals would likely not be doable with simple, cheap commercial GPS jammers. Furthermore, the SatNav receiver seems to work with several signals, likely to include Russian GLONASS and Chinese Beidou satellite network, on top of the US GPS and possibly European Galileo. Using several different signals would likely result in fairly high precision, especially for a system made of commercial components. Indeed, the report showed that the internal electronic circuits were in fact US-designed Texas Instruments boards, freely available commercially, which once again shows that preventing commercial-grade components from reaching weapons makers, even if those are under sanctions, can sometimes be a fool's errand. Shahed 136 is a bit larger than the inspected 131 model, but otherwise they appear similar in general shape, except for the vertical control surfaces, which are bigger on the 136, likely due to greater weight of the missile. The smaller model has an estimated weight of 135 kilos, so the 136 model might approach 200 kilos. Warhead estimates on the 136 vary, as it's hard to say how much of the carrying capacity is used on fuel and how much on the warhead. The general layout is similar to the Israeli Harpy drone, which too used a simple rotary piston engine. Huge delta wing used on all these drones/missiles/aircraft is there due to its effectiveness for the role. The missile needs to be cheap, hence the small piston engine. The engine can't propel the aircraft fast, hence the delta wing, which offers a lot of lift, easy controllability and avoids stalls at slow speeds. Delta wing is not as good for maneuvers, but being a simple missile, maneuvering is not something that's planned anyway. Delta wing is also draggy, which usually means low fuel efficiency. But given that the missile is piston engine powered and that the delta wing means a sturdy and light airframe, the fuel consumption is likely bearable for missions at hand. So what the much talked about Iranian strike drone is in Russian hands, it's a cheap battlefield standoff weapon, sort of a Russian answer to HIMARS GPS-guided multiple launch rockets. Neither is powerful enough to compare to a Tomahawk or Caliber cruise missile, warhead-wise, but they still pack some punch. HIMARS's GMLRS rounds are of course perhaps even 2 or 3 times more destructive, but they lack the range and waypoint options of the Shahed drones. It's likely that the 131's range, given the similar Israeli Harpy drone, is 500 to 900 kilometers, so 136's range might be over 1,000 kilometers. Low speed can be both a curse and a blessing. Coupled with its shape, fiberglass material and size, the radar cross-section of Iranian missile drones is likely already small. Low speed can also aid in lower chances of radar detection, as some radars, especially older ex-Soviet ones which Ukraine still uses, are not configured to monitor a combination of such small and slow radar returns. The engine used is quite noisy, so given the slow speed, the Iranian missile could be more easily tracked and even shot at by machine gun operators. But then again, human reaction is not perfect. Jamming can work to an extent, but capable jammers aren't going to be available in such numbers, so they cover a great deal of possible locations. They would work best for immediate protection of locations, so the missile has to rely on its inertial navigation system, a fairly simple gyroscope system to keep the costs down. So the jammed missile might be imprecise enough and not damage its target. Jamming the missile during its approach route is not going to do much, as the inertial navigation would keep the missile roughly on track before the missile gets out of jammer's fairly short reach and the SatNav signal can once again be received. In the end, the Shahed 136 is another Russian tool to gap some capability holes, likely a tool to deal with ever lower numbers of proper cruise missiles Russia has. It's likely even cheaper than HIMARS rounds or even a shoulder-launched anti-air missile, but then again, Russia is likely several times more strapped for cash than the US, to put it mildly. The 136 is more of a tactical cruise missile due to its tiny warhead. Its low price means it is used against individual vehicles on the front line. The long theoretical range is more often used for loitering, circling near the battlefield for hours until fresh coordinates are given to it. But if need be, its long range also provides the option of long-range strikes, like we've seen done over Odessa. Even though the initial Ukrainian reactions to the 136 destroying their artillery seem to paint a grim picture, over time Ukrainian forces will learn how to deal with the 136 better. While a single person with a machine gun is not reliable against Shaheds, alerted anti-aircraft artillery with decent optics can reliably deal with single drone attacks. A radar-assisted artillery might perform better against attacks where a few drones are massed at once. It could engage them from longer range and spend less time shooting at each drone. German-supplied Gepards are a good fit there, but their numbers are scarce. Ukraine had a few hundred Soviet-era Shilka systems too in storage. Some of those are being refurbished now to aid in the anti-missile role. Finland sends small quantities of their variants of ZSU-23 guns, which are also useful, having stabilized guns and laser rangefinders. Apparently, US-supplied laser-guided rocket missiles, same ones as used from attack helicopters, are sometimes used from pickup trucks to deal with Shahed drones. Shoulder-launched missiles are not ideal against those drones. They are not only pricey, but older generation ones like Strela have trouble locking onto fairly low-heat targets, such as small piston engines. NATO will likely send equipment better configured to detect and deal with such threats. So the overall impact of such drones, as we have been seeing it, is not revolutionary. So far, more pressing issue for Russia is the lack of constant eyes in the sky by using high-flying, more expensive recon drones. Iran is helping there too, but it remains to be seen if the number of drones procured and the number of operators trained is going to make an impact. Certainly, with more capable anti-air systems starting to be delivered to Ukraine, such as NASAMS and IRIS-T, such drones will keep getting threatened as well. Iranian drones and cruise missiles are therefore a piece of the puzzle. While a threat, they likely won't turn the tide of the war for Russia. For that to even become plausible, more systemic issues would likely have to be addressed first.